They sent Selene Marr away while the dragon crown was already warm. That was the cruelty of it. Not exile before love had mattered. Not dismissal before the years had marked her hands with smoke, hunger, and battlefield ash. They waited until the black gold crown had been lifted from its vault. They waited until the nobles filled Ashcrown Coronation Hall in jeweled silence. They waited until Dragon King Riven Ash stood 3 steps from the throne that had once refused his blood. Then Crown Priest Varro Dane turned to Selene and called her devotion inconvenient. "By purity law," Varro said, his voice carrying through the hall like a blade wrapped in velvet. "No woman of exile attachment may stand within the coronation circle. Exile attachment, not companion, not witness, not the woman who had held Riven upright through fever in the northern ruins, who had bound his burned shoulder with her own torn hem, who had learned the old fire songs, because his crown flame had trembled every time grief touched him. Attachment, something to be removed before the court saw it. Selene stood beside the lower obsidian step, dressed in the plain dark blue gown she had mended twice for this day. No jewels, no title, only a narrow ash-thread bracelet around her wrist, tied years ago when Riven had still been a hunted prince with dragon fire in his blood and no kingdom willing to shelter him. Riven did not look at the bracelet. He looked at Varro. "Is this required?" he asked. The question was quiet, too quiet. Selene felt the hall hear weakness where she had once heard restraint. Varro bowed his silver-crowned head. "Majesty, the realm has endured years of fracture. Your coronation must be clean. No rumor of exile dependence. No private bond standing where crown law must stand alone." Private bond. Selene almost smiled. There had been nothing private about hunger. Nothing private about sleeping beside cold dragonstone while assassins searched the valley below. Nothing private about Riven bleeding into snow while she pressed both hands over the wound and told him, "Stay angry if you must, but stay alive." The court knew none of that. Riven knew all of it. That was why his silence hurt. A noblewoman in the second tier whispered loudly enough to be heard. "She thought exile made her royal." Selene did not turn. Varro's eyes softened with practiced pity. "Mistress Marr, your loyalty during His Majesty's hardship is acknowledged. But devotion offered in darkness cannot be allowed to cast shadow on the throne." Selene looked at Riven then. He was dressed in coronation black. The dragon scale mantle clasped at his throat, his dark hair bound with a strip of red gold. He looked like the king people had prayed for. He also looked like the man who had once fallen asleep with his hand around hers because the crown fire in the exile brazier only steadied when she touched the stone beneath it. "Riven," she said. The hall inhaled at the use of his name. His eyes closed for the smallest moment. When they opened, he was king again. "Selene," he said, and the shape of her name in his mouth nearly undid her. "The coronation cannot be disputed." "No," she answered softly. "So I must be." His jaw tightened. Varro stepped between them before the truth could find more air. "A carriage waits beyond the east gate. Mistress Marr will be escorted to the outer residence until the rite concludes." Outer residence, a polite name for removal. Selene's fingers touched the ash-thread bracelet. "Am I being hidden or thanked?" Varro's smile did not move. "You are being spared court misunderstanding." "No," she said. "I am being erased before anyone can misunderstand correctly." Murmurs rose, offended and fascinated. Riven took one step toward her. The crown fire above the throne flickered. Everyone saw it. The sacred flame burned in a suspended bowl of dragon bone over the coronation dais, a living column of gold and red that had crowned every dragon ruler since the first Ash Wars. It should have roared brighter as Riven approached. Instead, when he moved toward Selene, the fire bent after him, not toward the crown, toward her. Varro's face changed only in the eyes. "Majesty," he warned. Riven stopped. The flame strained once, then steadied, but the gold at its heart thinned. Selene saw it. So did Riven. An old memory moved between them. A ruined chapel in exile, a cracked brazier, fire turning blue with pain until Selene laid 2 fingers against the stone and whispered, "Not for the crown, for the man still breathing." Riven looked away first. That was the betrayal. Not that he let them send her away, that he remembered, and still chose clean ritual. He had chosen a clean throne over the woman who had kept its fire from dying in exile. "Escort her," Varro said. 2 red-cloaked guards approached. Riven did not order them back. Selene lifted one hand before they could touch her. "I can walk." The guards paused. She turned to Riven one last time. "Do not summon me after the crown fails to do what love already did." The words struck him hard enough that his hand opened at his side, but he said nothing. Selene walked between the guards with her head high and her heart breaking in a way too quiet for court entertainment. At the Eastern Arch, she did not look back. Behind her, Varro began the coronation chant. "Let the crown fire prove the king clean of exile shadow." Riven stepped beneath the flame. The dragon crown was lifted. The hall brightened for one breath. Then the crown fire went cold. Not dim. Cold. Gold flame hardened into black crystal from the heart outward. Each frozen tongue of fire locking in place above the throne. Frost spread across the dragonbone bowl. The crown in the priest's hands lost its red glow and turned dark as buried iron. The hall screamed. Riven stared up at the dead flame. Varro whispered, "Impossible." At the Eastern Arch, Selene stopped. She did not turn around. Not yet. The crown fire had not crowned her. It had not forgiven him. It had only refused to burn over the absence everyone had been ordered to ignore. The fire was not calling her royal. It was recording what the rite had removed. The crown fire had not crowned Selene. It had only refused a coronation that cut away the hand which kept its exile flame alive. Varro Dane understood the danger of that distinction before the court did. He stepped beneath the black crystal flame with both hands raised, silver priest crown shining against the dead light. Frost webbed the dragonbone bowl above him. The dragon crown in his hands remained dark, no warmer than iron left in a grave. "Do not mistake failure for favor," Varro said, his voice rolling through Ash Crown Coronation Hall. "The crown fire has not chosen the woman at the Eastern Arch. It has recoiled from exile contamination remaining in the rite." The hall seized on the word like people drowning toward a rope. Contamination was easier than memory. Selene Marr stood beneath the Eastern Arch between 2 red-cloaked guards who no longer knew whether they were removing her or holding her for witness. She did not turn fully. Not yet. The black crystal fire reflected along the floor toward her feet, a frozen path she had not asked for. Riven Ash stood beneath the dead flame. He was king by blood and war. The crown fire had not yet accepted him. His eyes found Selene's at last, and the distance between them held every night of exile he had allowed a priest to rename. Varro turned to him. "Majesty, the rite must be contained." Her ash thread bracelet carried unsanctioned exile flame into the hall. Your hesitation toward her weakened the circle. Selene's fingers touched the bracelet. Riven saw it. He remembered tying it himself with shaking hands after their 3rd winter in hiding, when the exile brazier would not steady until her palm rested on the stone. He had remembered all of this before they led her away. That was the part no frozen fire could soften. "Stop the coronation," Riven said. The court broke into whispers. Varro bowed slowly. "A temporary pause is wise, not a pause. Stop it. Preserve the crown fire as it stands." Varro's gaze sharpened. "Majesty witness. Sealing a failed flame before interpretation may injure legitimacy. Then let legitimacy learn to stand under witness." The first true silence fell. Riven looked to the recorders. "Seal the dead crown fire. No heat, shard, ash, or frost is to be removed from the dragonbone bowl without crown witness." He did not look at Selene while he gave the order. Good. If he looked, the court might call it romance. If he looked, she might want it to be remorse. It was neither yet. It was only the first useful thing he had done after letting her be erased. Varro recovered. Then open the purity rite ledger. It will show the law was followed. Riven's mouth tightened. Open it. The ledger was brought from the priest dice, bound in white dragonhide and chained with gold. Varro laid his palm on the cover and spoke the release words. The lock opened with a sound like old bone cracking. The recorder read the coronation line. Crown bearer, crown priest, blood, witnesses, war witnesses, exile witness. The recorder stopped. Riven's gaze cut to him. Read it. The man swallowed. Exile witness line removed under purity revision. Selene finally turned. The hall saw her face then. Not pleading, not triumphant. Only very still, the way someone stands when the knife has been confirmed by handwriting. Varro inclined his head. Correct. Exile attachments cannot enter a clean coronation circle. The revision protects the throne from private dependence. Selene's voice carried from the arch. I was not shadow when the fire needed hands. The words moved through the hall more quietly than a shout, and more dangerously. Riven closed his hand at his side. He did not step toward her. He had not earned that. Date of revision, he ordered. The recorder looked down. 3 weeks after His Majesty returned from exile. The court murmured again. Varro's answer came ready. Naturally. The king's return required purification of exile conditions before public coronation. Who requested it? Priest Council review. Whose seal authorized it? Varro lifted his chin. Mine, under crown right authority. No confession. No fear. Only procedure sharpened into defense. Riven looked at the eastern arch. Open exile brazier records. Varro's expression cooled. Old exile records are survival notes, not crown law. Selene answered before Riven could. Then why did crown law hurry to erase them? The guards beside her shifted, unsure whether they should silence her. Riven's eyes flicked toward them. They stepped back. Not enough to restore her, enough to stop touching the insult. The exile brazier records came in a small black box, far humbler than the purity ledger. Soot stained the edges. One hinge was bent. Selene recognized the box immediately and hated that recognition hurt. The recorder opened it. First winter, he read. Crown ember unstable. Prince Riven unable to hold flame through fever, stabilized when Selene Marr placed hand on brazier stone. Riven's face changed. Not enough for the court. Enough for her. Second winter. Assassination flight through Hollow Pass. Crown ember split. Stabilized after Selene Marr warmed ash, thread, and held lower stone. Varro cut in. Informal exile notation. Emotional proximity may affect flame, but does not grant ritual standing. Selene looked at him. You call it emotional because service would require a debt. Riven's eyes lowered. The record continued. Third winter. Dragon Chapel ruin. Crown ember refused Prince's blood. Until Selene Marr sang lower fire cadence. The hall changed around her. Not belief. Not yet. Discomfort. The first crack in clean story. Riven turned to the recorders. Selene Marr is granted temporary crown, witness standing for right ledger, purity revision, and exile brazier records. The coronation remains pending. Selene's face did not soften. Do not call me witness, she said, while my ears beside him are still named contamination. Riven took the blow without defense. A king could halt a coronation and still leave the woman he erased outside the circle. The recorder turned the final brittle page of the oldest rite book, where faded notes lined the margin beside the first Ashcrown law. His voice thinned. There was an older margin. Varro's hand moved. Riven saw it. Read. The recorder obeyed. Exile flame must enter crown through the hand that kept it living. The margin did not crown Selene. It only proved the rite had once known what Varro's purity law had cut away. The margin did not crown Selene. It only proved the rite had once known what Varro's purity law had cut away. Varro Dane seized that boundary quickly. "Ancient margins are interpretive," he said, standing beneath the dead black crystal of the crown fire. "They do not overrule current purity law." The phrase "hand" that kept it living refers to the priestly flamekeeper, not to an exile companion standing outside court sanction. Selene Marr almost smiled. Not because it was funny, because men like Varro could watch a woman hold fire through 3 winters and still call her hands metaphor. Riven Ash looked at the brittle page. Frost from the dead flame glimmered over the old ink, making the margin look newly written and centuries buried at once. "Seal the margin," he said. Varro inclined his head. "As record, not law. As evidence." The correction landed quietly. Not enough to restore Selene. Enough to keep Varro from putting the line back into shadow. The recorders sealed the old page under thin crown glass. Riven did not look towards Selene while they worked. He had learned, at least for this hour, that his gaze could become a performance the court would misunderstand as repair. Selene stood just beyond the coronation circle, no longer touched by guards, still not invited inside it. A king could stop a coronation and still leave the woman it erased standing outside the circle. "Open the old law commentary," Riven ordered. Varro's eyes cooled. "Majesty, old commentaries contain ritual conditions from fractured reigns. They are not binding. Then they will not harm your argument when read." The old commentary came from the lower priest shelves in a copper tube blackened by age. Its pages were thin as shed dragon wing, the script faded brown around the edges. The priest scribe who held it looked as though he would rather carry a live coal in his teeth. The recorder read aloud. "In reigns interrupted by exile, crown flame continuity shall be carried from exile ember to coronation fire by the hand that kept the living ember stable." The hall shifted. Varro answered immediately. "Priestly hand." "The commentary assumes a sanctified keeper." Selene spoke from outside the circle. "Then show where it says priest." No one breathed. The recorder looked down, then down again. "It does not." Varro's mouth tightened, but his voice stayed smooth. "Context supplies meaning. Private service does not equal public right standing." Selene touched the ash thread bracelet at her wrist. "Do not rename continuity as contamination, because gratitude makes the throne less clean." Riven's hand closed once at his side. He remembered the bracelet. Of course he did. He had tied it when the exile brazier nearly failed in the Dragon Chapel ruin, when all he had left of kingship was a coal that shook every time his fever rose. He had let Varro call that same thread unsanctioned. "Examine the ash thread bracelet," Varro said. "If it carries old heat, it proves she brought exile contamination into the hall." Riven turned sharply. "Not without her consent." The hall quieted again. Selene looked at him. Not grateful. Vare. That hurt him visibly, but he did not defend himself. "Good. Ask me properly," she said. Riven's throat moved. "Selene Marr, will you permit crown witnesses to examine the ash thread bracelet for flame continuity? Not to prove I polluted your rite. No. For what then? To learn what the rite removed before it blamed you for being absent." She studied him a long moment, then untied the bracelet herself. No guard took it. No priest reached for her wrist. She placed the ash thread on a witness tray with her own fingers and stepped back. The crown fire reader passed a silver heat needle over it. The thread glowed. Not red, not gold, black-blue, like the exile brazier flame from the ruined chapel. The same color shivered inside the frozen crown fire above the throne. The reader whispered, "Matching crown heat." Varro's response came at once. "Matching heat can attach through proximity. That does not confer right." Selene looked at him. The bracelet was not a lover's token. It was where the exile flame had learned to survive. The court had no easy word for that. Riven looked at the thread as if it had become a small noose around his memory. "You kept the crown fire alive through my hand," Selene said to him, voice controlled. then cleaned the hand out of the story. He did not answer. He could not answer well, so he acted. Open witness line custody. Varro's jaw tightened. Draft entries are not law. Then, open them. The witness custody roll was brought forward. It listed proposed coronation participants from the first return council, before purity revision hardened the rite into something cleaner and less true. Crown bearer, crown priest, blood witnesses, war witnesses, exile witness. Selene Marr. A red line crossed through her name. Beside it, in priest court notation, was written, removed under purity review. Selene looked at the cross name without blinking. That was harder than tears. Varro said, draft entries are provisional. Her name was considered, then properly removed. After the purity revision, Riven said, under lawful authority, after I returned, for the protection of your throne. Selene's voice came softly from beyond the circle. You protected his throne from the truth that it had not survived alone. The words struck where ceremony could not shield him. Riven turned to the recorders. Selene Marr's temporary crown, witness standing, expands to old law commentary. Ash, thread continuity, witness line custody, and crown flame transfer records. The coronation remains pending. Selene's eyes found his. Do not expect thanks because you are letting my erasure explain itself. I do not. That was not apology. It was not enough. But it did not ask her to comfort him. The crown flame transfer records were opened last. Their pages smelled faintly of smoke and priest oil. The recorder turned past ordinary flame-handling notes until a thin, folded slip fell from between two records. Varro's hand moved again. Riven saw it. Read the slip. The recorder's voice nearly failed. Do not admit Marr. Classify continuity as contamination. The slip did not yet prove Varro's hand had written the command. It proved the priest court had named Selene's service as a danger before the coronation ever began. The slip did not yet prove Varro's hand had written the command. It proved the priest court had named Selene's service as a danger before the coronation ever began. Varro Dane let the silence stretch just long enough for fear to look like confusion instead of accusation. Then he spoke. Risk language, he said. Nothing more. The words moved neatly through Ashcrown Coronation Hall, polished smooth by years of sacred law. Above him, the crown fire remained frozen in black crystal, each hardened flame tongue catching the torchlight without giving any warmth back. Selene Marr stood beyond the coronation circle, with her ash thread bracelet lying on the witness tray, still glowing faintly with black-blue exile heat. No one touched it. Riven Ash had made sure of that. It did not make him clean. It only meant he had learned, too late, not to take another thing from her hands without asking. Varro faced the court. Priest court files often classify potential ritual risks before public rites. Continuity may become contamination when carried through unsanctioned channels. The note does not command erasure, it records caution. Selene looked at him. The word contamination had been chosen before I reached the hall, because the hall must be protected before danger enters it. I entered exile before this hall remembered him. A few nobles looked down. Riven did not. That was worse in some ways. His gaze stayed on her now, steady and full of the memory he had refused to defend when it mattered. She looked away first this time, not because she was weaker, because she would not let his regret become a place to rest. Riven turned to the recorders. Seal the classification slip. Varro inclined his head. As a precautionary note, as evidence in a classification chain. The recorders sealed it under crown glass, beside the old margin and the ash thread continuity reading. The black crystal flame above gave no answer. It did not melt. It did not flare. It only remained dead enough that every person in the hall had to keep looking at what absence had done. Open slip custody, Riven ordered. A priest scribe brought forward a narrow ledger bound in grey scale. His hands trembled only when he passed Varro. Riven saw that. So did Selene. The recorder read from the custody line. Classification slip entered into Crown Flame transfer file 12 days after purity revision. Filed under coronation risk preparation. Cross marked with witness line removal. Varro answered without hesitation. Correct. Once purity law was revised, all related files required alignment. Alignment, Selene said softly. That is a clean word for burial. Varro's eyes cooled. Mistress Marr, injury does not make you interpreter of law. No, she said, but being buried by it gives me some familiarity. The hall stirred. Riven's jaw tightened, but he did not speak for her. Good. She did not need him to translate pain he had watched happen. Open priest council minutes from the purity revision, he said. Varro's expression sharpened. Majesty, council minutes are internal priest deliberation. Revealing them before interpretation may damage crown confidence. Confidence is already standing under a dead fire. The minutes were brought in 3 sealed packets. Varro placed his palm on the top packet, but Riven's voice stopped him. By crown witness, not priest custody. A crown recorder broke the seal. The first page listed ritual concerns after Riven's return from exile. Disputed legitimacy, surviving enemies, fear of foreign influence, unsanctioned companions. The second page held the phrase that turned the hall colder than the frozen flame. Original language. Exile continuity must be acknowledged for flame acceptance. Revised language. Exile contamination must be excluded for rite purity. Selene stared at the 2 lines. Continuity. Contamination. Only 3 syllables had turned years of survival into something shameful. Varro stepped forward. Language was refined for legal clarity. Continuity through unsanctioned persons creates contamination risk. Selene's voice came low. You cleaned the throne by dirtying the woman who kept its flame alive. Riven's hand closed at his side. The words hit him, and everyone saw it. But he did not ask her to soften them. He turned the page himself. Compare witness draft. The witness draft was opened again. Selene's name appeared where it had before. Exile, witness. Selene Marr. Then the same red line. Removed after council revision. Beside the mark. Replace with priestly flame keeper. Varro said, a priestly keeper is the lawful hand of the right. Selene looked at the ash thread on the tray. Do not call my hand symbolic after your fire learned to live through it. The crown flame transfer record was opened next. Its ink shimmered faintly, reacting to the dead crown fire overhead. The recorder read carefully. For acceptance, exile ember must be transferred through the continuity bearer. Ash thread heat may verify bearer contact. Varro lifted his chin. Symbolic verification. The priestly keeper may bear the thread. Was a priest present in the chapel ruin? Riven asked. Varro paused. Not long. No. Was a priest named in the exile brazier records? No. Was Selene Marr? Varro's mouth thinned. Informally. Selene's answer cut through him. Informal is what men call survival, before they need it in court. Riven turned to the recorders. Selene Marr's temporary crown. Witness standing expands to slip custody. Priest council minutes. Classification chain. Witness line draft. And crown flame transfer authority. The coronation remains pending. Selene looked at him across the circle she still had not been invited to enter. A king can open council minutes, she said, and still leave the woman erased from them outside the circle. Yes, he said. No defense. No apology. Only the truth forced to stand upright. The priest scribe handling the council packet turned to the final page and went suddenly pale. Riven saw it. Read. Varro's head turned sharply. That page concerns royal briefing. Read it. The scribe swallowed. Revision page. Removing Selene Marr from exile. Witness line withheld from King Designate Riven Ash. during coronation preparation. The withheld page did not make Riven innocent. It made his ignorance useful. Revision page removing Selene Marr from exile witness line withheld from King-designate Riven Ash during coronation preparation. The words sat in Ash Crown Coronation Hall beneath the dead crown fire, and every noble understood the danger at once. If Riven had not been shown the removal page, then the coronation had been shaped around him as much as around Selene. But Selene did not mistake that for justice. He had not needed to read the page to see her being led away. He had seen that with his own eyes. Varro Dane recovered first, as he always did. Briefing omissions occur when priest court matters are procedural, he said. The king was informed of the purity standard. He did not require every internal revision page. Selene looked at him from outside the circle. Convenient. He was told enough to obey, and not enough to question. A sharp murmur crossed the hall. Riven's eyes moved to her. She did not soften. You looked away first, she said. The sentence did not need volume. It knew where to cut. Riven held still beneath it. Yes, not apology, not repair. Just the first refusal to hide from the exactness of what she had named. Varro stepped forward. Majesty, I caution against allowing personal grief to reinterpret priest governance. Riven turned to the recorders. Open royal briefing custody. Varro's expression tightened. That packet includes strategic legitimacy concerns. It includes what was kept from me before I let her be removed. The court went quiet. Let. Selene heard the word. So did Varro. So did every noble who had watched him stand silent while guards approached her. The royal briefing custody packet was brought from the Crown Archive in a black case, sealed with red wax and priest silver. Riven did not let Varro open it. A crown recorder broke both seals under witness and unfolded the first page, briefed to King Designate. Purity requirement, removal of exile attachments, crown circle limits. Not briefed. Witness line revision. Selene Marr name removal, classification of continuity as contamination, crown flame transfer dependency. The recorder's voice thinned at the final phrase. Crown flame transfer dependency. Selene's gaze moved to the dead black fire above the throne. Riven's face changed with it. Varro raised one hand. Dependency is technical language. It means the right depends on proper flame channels, not on Mistress Marr herself. Then why was her name removed from the line beside it? Riven asked. Because private attachment creates interpretive danger. Selene laughed once, softly. You did not protect the crown from exile. You protected the throne from owing anyone. That landed harder than accusation because no one could easily deny it. Riven looked at the dragon crown resting dark in the priest's hands. It had not warmed since Selene reached the arch. It had not answered his blood, his mantle, or the chant built to make him appear unbroken. He unclasped the coronation mantle from his shoulders. The hall gasped. Varro's voice sharpened. Majesty. Riven laid the black dragon-scale mantle on the witness table beside the old margin, the ash thread bracelet, the witness draft, and the withheld page. No crown right continues while priest court records remain under dispute, he said. The nobles erupted. A warlord stood. The border houses need a crowned king. Riven looked at him. Then they need a true coronation. Varro's face hardened beneath its calm. An uncrowned king invites rebellion. A false right invites a colder throne. The crown fire above them gave no answer. No flare. No sign. No mercy. Only black crystal and the sound of a kingdom realizing its ceremony had been built on a missing woman. Riven turned to the priest scribes. Priest court control over coronation interpretation is suspended under crown witness until classification chain review concludes. Varro went still. That was the cost. Not ankring noblesse. Not delaying a crown. Touching the priesthood's hand on the flame. Majesty, Varro said carefully, that authority predates your reign, and today It withheld the page that removed a lawful witness. Lawful remains unproven. Then it will be proven, without your office controlling every file that could prove it. Selene watched him from beyond the circle. There it was. Action with consequence. Still not enough. Never enough yet. Riven turned to her. Your temporary crown. Witness standing expands to royal briefing custody and priest court interpretation review. Temporary, she said. Yes. Outside the circle, his jaw tightened. Yes. Still contamination under the current law. A pause. Yes. Then do not expect me to warm, because your courage finally found a record table. He accepted that too. The acceptance hurt more than defense might have. Varro used the silence. Mistress Marr's bitterness proves why purity law exists. The crown cannot be governed by private injury. Selene looked at him. My injury became public the moment you needed it removed in front of witnesses. The recorder opened the next royal briefing index. Riven saw the priest scribe hesitate. Read, he said. The scribe obeyed. In the event of crown fire, refusal after exclusion of continuity bearer, emergency relighting authority transfers to Crown Priest Varro Dane as sole sanctioned flame intermediary. For the first time, Varro Dane said nothing quickly. Above them, the black crystal flame remained cold, and the hall understood that a failed coronation had already been given a priest who knew how to profit from its failure. The emergency clause did not say Varro Dane had made the crown fire fail. It said he was ready to inherit the failure. Emergency relighting authority transfers to Crown Priest Varro Dane as sole sanctioned flame intermediary. The line lay beneath crown glass on the witness table, while Ash Crown Coronation Hall breathed around it in frightened fragments. Nobles whispered behind jeweled hands. Warlords looked at the dead black crystal above the throne, and then at Riven Ash, measuring the danger of a king whose crown had refused to burn. Varro's silence lasted only long enough to look honorable. Every sacred rite requires emergency structure, he said. If the crown fire fails, the priesthood must preserve continuity until the king can be accepted. Selene Marr stood outside the coronation circle, where the law still left her. Accepted by what remains after you remove what kept it living? Varro turned to her. Mistress Marr, your pain does not make you fluent in crown mechanics. No, she said. But being cut out of them gives me reason to read carefully. Riven did not hide the effect of that line. His eyes moved from Selene to the emergency clause, then to the dragon crown lying dark on the witness table beside his discarded mantle. Open the emergency relighting protocol, he ordered. Varro's jaw tightened. Majesty, those pages contain priest mysteries. They contain authority over my crown. The protocol was brought in a red iron case carried by 2 senior priests. Neither met Selene's eyes. The first pages described ordinary relighting after storm, siege, or royal death. The second section listed failure caused by broken continuity. Riven's voice cut through the hall. Read that section. The recorder swallowed. If exile continuity is absent or declared impure, crown fire may be relit through priest intermediary. Until natural flame acceptance is restored, the crown priest shall hold interpretive authority over crown heat, first sovereign commands, and legitimacy declarations. The hall went still. Selene looked at Riven then, not with triumph, with a sorrow so controlled it felt colder than anger. You did not only let them erase me, she said. You let them build a throne that would need him after I was gone. Riven's face tightened. He did not answer. There was no answer that would not ask her to comfort the man who had stood silent while law made her disposable. Varro stepped forward. That is a severe misreading. Priest intermediary protects unstable kingship. A dragon throne cannot burn on private attachment. Selene's voice lowered. Do not call survival private because the court was absent when it happened. A murmur moved through the lower tiers. Riven turned another page himself. Date of protocol revision. The recorder leaned over the record. Same council. Session. As purity revision, Varro said. Naturally. Connected reforms are recorded together. Connected, Selene repeated. First, my service becomes contamination. Then his crown failure becomes your authority. Varro's eyes cooled. You imply design where there is governance. Riven looked to the old crown fire, frozen above him in black crystal. Open crown heat tests from after my return. Varro's response came too quickly. Routine tests cannot be interpreted by the court. They will be interpreted under witness. The heat test records were thinner than the purity ledgers, but their numbers were precise. Riven's blood heat. Crown ember response. Priest correction. Flame stability. The recorder read until the pattern became impossible to ignore. Before purity revision, unstable, then stabilized with exile ember trace. After Selene's witness line removed. Crown heat reduced. After ash thread excluded. Crown heat dependent on priest correction. After final rehearsal, priest intermediary recommended. Selene's fingers closed slowly. The bracelet on the tray glowed once. Faint black blue. Then went still. Not a summons. Not a crown. Only old heat, answering its own name. Varro lifted a hand toward it. Again. Unsanctioned proximity. Riven's voice cut him off. Do not touch it. The priest stopped. Selene looked at Riven. A small thing. Too late. Still hers to notice. You are learning not to take, she said. That is not the same as returning. I know. No apology. Only the wound left standing where defense used to be. Riven faced the recorders. Open priest correction logs. This time Varro's calm thinned. Correction logs are sacred handling records, and if they are clean, they will survive being read. The first correction log listed minor adjustments. The next listed stronger priest binding. The final line made the recorder's voice falter. Upon public exclusion of exile continuity bearer, priest correction expected to become necessary for sovereign flame retention. Selene stared at the words. Publique exclusion. Note absence. Exclusion. Riven's hand closed over the table edge, hard enough that the black stone cracked beneath his fingers. Varro spoke before the room could turn fully. Expected necessity is not manipulation. It is preparation for risks created by exile impropriety. Selene looked at him. You named the wound improper before you made the cut. The hall absorbed that in silence. Riven looked toward the coronation circle. The circle Selene still had not entered. The circle Varro's law had made clean enough to kill its own fire. Crown priest authority over emergency relighting is suspended pending full review, he said. A priest cried out. Majesty, without priest correction, the crown fire may remain dead. Riven did not look away from the black crystal. Then it remains dead, until truth can stand closer than control. That cost him more than delay. It meant no crowned certainty, no immediate legitimacy, no priest-held flame to borrow strength from. Varro's face hardened. You risk the realm for an exile attachment. Selene answered before Riven could. No. He risked the realm when he let you teach him that attachment was the name for the hand that kept him alive. The recorder turned the last page of the correction log. A folded black strip slid free. Riven's eyes narrowed. Read it. The recorder did. If the king resists priest intermediary after continuity exclusion, declare crown fire weakness, evidence of exile corruption, and require priest counter-seal on first sovereign commands. By the time the black strip was sealed, Ash Crown Coronation Hall no longer sounded like a throne room. It sounded like a chamber learning how much of its power had been borrowed. The crown fire remained frozen over the dais, black crystal locked in the shape of flame. Frost climbed the dragonbone bowl and silvered the carved wings above Riven Ash's head. The dragon crown lay dark on the witness table beside the purity ledger, the ash thread bracelet, the witness draft, the council minutes, and the emergency protocols that had turned absence into priestly authority. Varodane looked at the black strip through the crown glass. If the king resists priest intermediary after continuity exclusion, the recorder had read, declare crown fire weakness evidence of exile corruption and require priest counter seal on first sovereign commands. Varro's face held grave control. A defensive provision, nothing more. If exile corruption threatened the throne, the priesthood was required to protect the realm from unstable command. Selene Marr laughed once. It was not loud. It was worse. You built a lock for his throne and called me the rust. The hall stirred. Riven did not defend Varro. He did not defend himself. He looked at the first sovereign command parchment waiting near the crown table. Appointment of border wardens, release of winter grain, recognition of war debts. Ordinary rule had been waiting behind ceremony. Now, every command sat under a dead flame, and a priest's prepared counterseal. A warlord rose. Majesty, the realm cannot wait upon a frozen right. Varro turned toward Riven with gentle urgency. Let me counterseal the first commands until the crown fire can be interpreted. Temporary priest authority will calm the houses. Selene looked at Riven then, not pleading, measuring. This was the moment clean thrones always found. When truth became inconvenient again, Riven placed his hand on the first command parchment, then drew it back. No priest counterseal. The hall broke into open alarm. Varro's voice sharpened beneath its calm. Majesty, refusing lawful stabilization may be read as confirming exile corruption. Then let the record read that I refuse to govern through the hand that prepared to profit from her exclusion. Selene's breath caught before she could stop it. She hated that the words reached her. She hated more that they were still late. Riven turned to the crown recorder. No sovereign command leaves this hall until the classification chain, purity revision, and emergency counter-seal protocol are reviewed. The warlord struck his staff against the stone. Then you leave the realm leaderless. Riven's answer came cold. Better leaderless for a night than ruled through a lie for a reign. That cost him. Selene saw it ripple through the upper tiers. Fear, calculation, disloyalty beginning to dress itself as concern. He had not only delayed a coronation now, he had delayed rule. Varro saw it too. The king sacrifices the realm for an exile attachment, he said softly, letting the words travel. Selene stepped forward, only far enough to be heard. Say the whole thing, crown priest. He sacrifices the convenience of your seal for the witness your law removed. Varro looked at her. You enjoy this influence. The insult was elegant. The wound was old. Selene's face did not change. If I had enjoyed influence, I would not have been standing at the door while you explained why my years beside him should disappear. Riven closed his eyes for the briefest moment. When he opened them, Selene was already turning away from the circle. His hand moved once, stopped. Good. She would not be pulled back by regret, wearing the face of need. Selene, he said. She paused. The hall listened too greedily. He seemed to know it, because his voice changed lower, stripped of command. No one will force you to touch the crown fire. Varro stepped in. Majesty, if Mistress Marr is truly continuity bearer, her refusal prolongs the crisis. There it was. The new chain, not iron. Necessity. Selene turned slowly. The ash thread bracelet still lay on the witness tray. Without it, her wrist felt strangely bare, as if the court had taken a memory and made it public property. You removed me when love embarrassed the crown, she said. You call me necessary now that absence embarrasses it. I will not become useful only when the throne fails. Riven took the words as if they belonged in him. They do, he said. Not apology. Not enough. But he did not argue. Selene's throat tightened despite herself. She looked at the frozen fire above him, then at the records, Then at the circle where her name should have stood before anyone needed proof. "I am leaving Ashcrown Hall," a noblewoman gasped. During coronation suspension, Selene looked toward the tears. "I was already removed before the suspension made my absence valuable." Riven's voice was rougher now. "Where will you go?" She almost smiled at the cruelty of the question. He had allowed them to send her to an outer residence when it was convenient. Now he asked as if the answer mattered. "To the East Guest House you prepared for erasure." He flinched. "Good. Let him know the name of the room." Varro spoke quickly. "Mistress Marr should remain under Crown supervision. Her ash, thread, her proximity, and her possible continuity function are material to the rite." Selene's eyes cut to him. "I am not a function." The hall went silent. She turned back to Riven. "If your inquiry needs my testimony, ask under witness. If your crown needs my hand, first decide whether that hand is service or contamination. Until then, let your clean throne feel how cold clean can become." Riven bowed his head once, not as king to subject, as a man who had no right to stop her. Selene walked out of Ashcrown Coronation Hall alone. No guards touched her, no priest escorted her, no crown summoned her back. Behind her, the first sovereign command parchment on the witness table blackened at the edges, not burned by flame, frosted from within. The crown seal would not take, and without priest counter-seal, Riven Ash's first command as king remained blank. Morning found Ashcrown without a crowned king. The banners still hung. The dragon crown still lay dark beneath witness glass. The crown fire remained black crystal above the throne, cold enough that frost gathered on the upper pillars and turned the golden dragons carved there into pale bones. No sovereign command had taken seal. Not the border warden appointments. Not the winter grain release. Not the debt recognitions that would keep 3 southern houses from turning anxious loyalty into armed bargaining. Varro Dane stood before the witness table with a priest council at his back. "Majesty," he said, "the realm cannot function while private injury holds the crown hostage. If Mistress Marr will not assist the rite, priest counterseal remains the only lawful path." Riven Ash looked at the blank command parchment, then at the frozen crown fire, then at the east doors through which Selene had walked alone. "She is not holding the crown hostage," he said. "The law that erased her is." Varro's expression held. "That is a romantic interpretation of ritual failure." "No," Riven said. "It is a record-based interpretation of your own files." The court shifted. It was beginning to understand that Riven had stopped answering as a lover and started answering as a witness. That made him more dangerous to Varro, not less. "Open the Exile Oath archive," Riven ordered. Varro's eyes sharpened. "Exile oaths are not coronation instruments. They kept me alive long enough to stand here. Survival gratitude cannot govern crown law." Riven's voice went cold. "Then crown law will learn who it survived." The Exile Oath archive was not kept near the throne. That was its first confession. It came from a lower stone chamber beneath the east wing, carried in plain iron chests with no gold, no dragon hide, no priest jewels. The court looked uncomfortable when the chests were opened, as if poverty itself had climbed into the hall with evidence in its hands. The first oath belonged to a blacksmith who had hidden Riven beneath a coal wagon. The second to a widow who had fed him through a winter pass. The third to a scarred border surgeon who had removed a poisoned arrowhead with a kitchen knife. Then came names. Dozens. Small hands holding up a fallen crown in the years when the court had preferred not to see it. Selene Marr's oath appeared in the 4th bundle, not written in silver, written in ash ink. Riven did not touch it first. He turned to the recorders. "Read it under witness." The recorder's voice softened despite himself. "Selene Marr, no title, no house claim, vows to keep the exile ember living while Riven Ash breathes, whether Crown recognizes him or not." The hall quieted. "Whether Crown recognizes him or not." Selene had loved him outside usefulness, before the throne remembered his name. Varro stepped forward. Personal loyalty oath. Moving, but not binding to coronation law. Riven looked at him. Then why was her oath sealed behind priest restriction? Varro paused. Many exile oaths required review. Open the restriction mark. The recorder turned the oath over. Priest court notation. Do not read during coronation preparation. Devotional language may weaken sovereign solitude. A murmur broke through the hall. Riven's face hardened. You protected the image of a solitary king by hiding every hand that held him up. Varro answered smoothly. A ruler must stand as crown, not as collection of debts. Selene's voice came from the east side of the hall. I was never asking to be debt. Every head turned. She stood just inside the doors, still in the same dark blue gown, her hair loosely pinned, her face pale from a sleepless night. No guards flanked her. No priest had brought her. She had come because the Oath Archive had spoken her name, not because Riven had summoned her. Riven did not step toward her. You were not called, he said. I know. Her gaze moved to the open chests. That is why I came. Varro recovered. Mistress Marr, if you wish your oath considered, you must submit to ritual positioning. No. The answer was calm. A few nobles flinched anyway. Selene looked at the archive. Do not use my oath to warm the same throne that called my presence contamination. Riven's jaw tightened. I will not. Then why read it? To restore what was hidden. To whom? He looked at the court. To the realm. That reached her. Not enough to heal. Enough to make her look at him fully. You are learning, she said. But learning is not returning. I know. Varro's voice cut in. Majesty, this display risks turning the coronation into a public ledger of emotional claims. Riven turned to the court. Every exile oath sealed from coronation preparation will be read before any priest counterseal is discussed. The priest council erupted. Varro's calm thinned. That will humiliate the throne, Selene answered before Riven could. No. It will show the throne was never alone enough to be humiliated by gratitude. Riven looked at her then with such visible pain that the hall went quiet around it. He still did not reach for her. Good. The oath reader opened the next restriction packet. Then another. Each bore similar notations. Unsuitable for coronation, dignity, excessive personal reliance, survival witness outside purity, devotion risk. At the bottom of the final packet was a narrow priest order sealed in black wax. The recorder hesitated. Riven's voice sharpened. Read. The recorder obeyed. Before flame restoration, all exile oaths naming Selene Marr are to remain unread. Crown acceptance must proceed without survival witnesses. The order at the bottom of the priest packet did not frighten Selene Marr. It clarified things. All exile oaths naming her were to remain unread before flame restoration. Crown acceptance was supposed to proceed without survival witnesses. The priest court had not merely removed her from the circle, it had tried to remove every proof that the circle had ever needed anyone outside itself. Varro Dane closed his hand over the edge of the table. A standard containment instruction. Excessive oath recitation before coronation can inflame public sentiment. Selene looked at the iron chests of exile oaths. Public sentiment, she said. Another clean phrase for people remembering who bled. A murmur moved through Ashcrown Coronation Hall. Riven Ash stood near the witness table, crownless, mantleless, with the first sovereign command still blank beside his hand. The frozen crown fire hung above him like judgment denied warmth. What do you require? He asked. Varro turned sharply. Majesty, she has no authority to set right conditions. Selene did not look at Varro. She looked at Riven. Ask that again, she said, without needing the flame. The hall went still. Riven's face tightened, but he did not look away. What do you require, Selene Marr? Not queen. Not beloved, not savior. Her name, that was all she would allow from him now. Every exile oath read publicly, she said. Everyone. Not summarized, not sealed for dignity. Read. Varro's voice hardened beneath its smoothness. That would turn coronation into confession. No, Selene said. It would turn survival into record. Riven looked at the recorders. Read them. The first chest opened. The blacksmith's oath came first. He had hidden Riven beneath coal, while priest scouts searched the eastern road. A widow's oath followed. She had fed him with winter roots for 11 days. A child's oath came next, voice recorded by a village clerk. He had lied to soldiers and sent them toward an empty ravine. One by one, the throne became less solitary. The nobles grew restless, not because the oaths were dull, because they were small. Small people, small rooms, small fires, small hands, carrying the weight the court had later called inevitable kingship. Selene stood while each name entered the hall. Varro stepped closer to Riven. Majesty, the realm needs strength, not dependency displayed as virtue, Riven answered without looking at him. The realm needs to know what strength cost. Then came the first oath, naming Selene. Selene Marr kept the exile ember through the storm at Grey Hollow, when Prince Riven's blood heat failed. A second. Selene Marr steadied the chapel brazier with ash, thread and hand. A third. Selene Marr refused evacuation until the crown ember transferred safely across the North Pass. Varro's tone sharpened. These are devotional exaggerations made under stress. Selene turned to him. You keep calling memory unreliable because it survived without your permission. A few people in the lower hall bowed their heads. Riven's gaze moved to the ash thread bracelet on the witness tray. Selene saw him see it. Do not make that thread your proof yet, she said. His eyes returned to hers. It is yours. It was ours once, she said quietly. Before you let them make it mine, only when blame needed a place. That hurt him. Good. Pain was not payment, but it was at least honest. The recorders continued until their voices grew hoarse. Oath after oath named road, hunger, fire, hiding, fever, ash, and the woman who had not left when staying gave her no title. At last, the final bundle was opened. A priest scribe whispered. This packet was marked unreadable. Riven's voice went cold. By whom? The scribe looked at Varro. Varro did not move. Many packets were sealed for right dignity. Selene stepped forward, stopping at the edge of the coronation circle. Not inside. Not yet. Read it, she said. The scribe broke the seal. Inside was a crown transfer note, older than the purity revision, written in formal priest hand and signed by 3 council witnesses. For crown fire restoration after exile, Selene Marr shall stand as survival witness and continuity bearer. Her ash thread verified before crown acceptance. The hall went silent. There it was. Not lover, not queen, not attachment. Continuity bearer, survival witness. Varro spoke at once. A proposed placement, never adopted into current law. Because you revised the law after it named me, Selene said. Because the throne required purity. No, she said. Because the throne required gratitude, and gratitude would have made it look less alone. The crown fire cracked overhead, just once. A thin line split through the black crystal, bright as a buried coal beneath ice. No flame emerged. No crown accepted Riven. No magic crowned Selene. The fire was listening to the record it had been denied. Varro lifted both hands. You see? Instability. Her presence fractures the flame further. Selene looked up at the crack, then back at Riven. If that fire burns again, she said, it will not be because I forgive you. It will be because the right stops lying. Riven's voice came low. Name the lie that must be struck first. She faced the court. The word attachment. A ripple moved through every tear. Selene stepped to the witness table and placed one finger beside her crossed name. Not on it. I will not touch the crown fire while my years are called exile attachment. I will not warm a crown that keeps its witnesses outside the circle. I will not become useful only after being erased. Riven turned to the recorder. Strike attachment from the active coronation record. Varro's voice cut in. You cannot rewrite purity law mid-write. Selene's answer was colder than the dead flame. Then let the right remain dead. The crack in the crown fire widened. From within the black crystal, one sealed ember fell into the dragonbone bowl. It did not burn. It revealed a folded record hidden in the ash. The recorder lifted it with silver tongs and read the title aloud. Final Purity Revision Witnesses. Excluded by Crown Priest Authority. The hidden revision was not a confession. It was worse. Confessions could be softened by fear, grief, pressure, shame. Records did not tremble. They waited. They held ink in the dark until someone finally forced light close enough to read. The crown recorder unfolded the fire-warmed page beneath the dead crystal flame. Final Purity Revision Witnesses. Excluded by Crown Priest Authority. Varro Dane stood very still. Riven Ash did not look away from him. Read all of it. Varro's voice cut in. Majesty, final revisions contain interpretive safeguards. Read, Riven said. The recorder obeyed. Exile witness line removed to preserve sovereign solitude. Survival oaths naming Selene Marr excluded from public right. Continuity bearer language replaced by exile attachment. Crown flame dependency to be treated as contamination risk. In event of failure, priest intermediary authority to apply. The hall did not erupt. It went quiet in the way a room goes quiet, when everyone inside it understands they have been made audience to a theft. Not of gold, of history. Selene Marr stood at the edge of the coronation circle, one hand resting beside her crossed-out name. She had thought she was done feeling the cut of that red line. She had been wrong. Varro lifted his chin. Sovereign solitude is not theft. It is doctrine. The people need a king who stands alone. Selene looked at him. No, you needed a king who believed he did. Riven's hand closed over the witness table. This time, he did not crack stone. He opened the record. Strike the revision, he said. The priest council recoiled. Varro's calm shattered only at the edges. You cannot strike purity law before coronation acceptance. I can strike fraud from the right that seeks to crown me. Fraud is your word. It will be the records. He turned to the court, mantleless, crownless, standing beneath a fire still too cold to bless him. Let every house hear this. I allowed Selene Marr to be sent away because the throne was offered to me clean. I let Crown Priest Varro Dane call survival attachment. I let the court watch her removed before I asked what my fire had survived through her hands. Selene's breath caught, not because it healed, because he said it where the wound had happened. Riven continued. My ignorance of this page does not clear me. I did not need the page to know she was being erased. I saw it. I permitted it. That will stand in the coronation record. No one spoke. Not even Varro. Riven faced the recorders. Rewrite the active right. Selene Marr is to be named exile witness and continuity bearer. Not attachment. Not contamination. Exile witness. The word moved through the hall. Exile witness. It did not make her queen. It did not return the years, but it took the dirty name off her devotion. Selene closed her eyes once, then opened them before anyone could mistake it for surrender. Varro stepped toward the dais. If you place unsanctioned exile service into the coronation circle, you weaken every purity boundary that protects the throne. Selene answered him. Good. A boundary that survives by lying about who kept the fire alive deserves to weaken. Riven removed the silver priest crown from Varro's head himself. Not violently. Worse. Publicly. Crown Priest Varro Dane, You are stripped of coronation authority pending tribunal for altering purity law, withholding witness records, classifying continuity as contamination, and preparing priest control through crown fire failure. Varro's face went pale beneath the hall's frozen light. The throne will regret needing unsanctioned hands. Selene stepped into the circle for the first time. Only one step, enough to be seen. Do not call my hand unsanctioned after your law spent all night proving it knew exactly who I was. The crown fire cracked overhead. A second ember fell into the dragonbone bowl. Then a third. Still no flame. Selene looked up at it. Not yet. The hall obeyed her silence more completely than it had obeyed Varro's law. She turned to Riven. Every exile oath. He nodded. Everyone. The recorders read until voices grew hoarse. Blacksmith, widow, surgeon, child, smuggler, farmer, ash singer, border girl, old priest who had hidden a coal beneath his tongue. Then Selene's oaths again, not as scandal, not as attachment, but as survival record. Riven stood through every word. He did not sit. He did not put on the mantle. He did not take the crown. At the end, Selene lifted the ash thread bracelet from the witness tray. The bracelet was not proof that I belonged to him, she said to the court. It was proof the crown fire survived where the crown did not. She placed it in the dragonbone bowl. The black crystal flame shivered. Riven looked at her. Only if you choose. I know. She laid her palm on the lower transfer stone. Not for him, not for forgiveness, for the years the law had tried to bury. Let the right remember honestly, Selene said. The crown fire broke open. Black crystal split without sound, and gold flame rose through it, threaded with blue exile heat. It did not leap towards Selene. It did not crown her. It burned through the corrected witness line, warmed the exile oaths, and climbed at last toward the dragon crown. The crown flushed red gold in Riven's hands. He did not lift it. Not yet. He looked at Selene first. Will you stand as exile? Witness, he asked. Under the corrected law? Yes. With Varro's purity revision struck? Yes. With survival witnesses in the right after me? Yes. She nodded once. Then I will stand. The coronation continued, but it was no longer clean. It was true. When the crown settled over Riven Ash's brow, the crown fire burned steady not because Selene had forgiven him, and not because the throne had chosen her, but because the right had finally stopped lying about what kept it alive. Later, when the hall emptied and Varro's silver crown lay sealed as evidence, Riven found Selene beside the east arch. He stopped several steps away. I cannot ask you to stay, he said. No, I cannot ask you to love what I let them do to you. No, his voice lowered. Then, I will make the law remember you whether you remain beside me or not. Selene looked at him for a long time. The man who had looked away first now stood without crown fire shadow to hide in. I will remain as exile, witness until the new right is written, she said. After that, I choose where I stand. Riven bowed his head. After that, you choose. Selene walked past him into the warm hall. This time, no one called her attachment. Behind her, the crown fire burned with two colors. Royal gold and exile blue, not as romance, not as reward, but as record. And Selene Marr finally had the power to decide whether love would ever again be allowed near the throne that had once tried to erase it.